The Senate Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Mr. Secretary, if you could please call the roll.
Vice Chair Ornshell. Here. Senator Goycochea. Here. Senator Daly. Here. Senator Krasner. Yes. Chair Flores.
Present. Please let the record reflect all members are present. We have a quorum. Good afternoon. Welcome all to our hard-working committee. I want to remind everybody to please silence your cell phones. I'm doing the same now. If you haven't had an opportunity to do so, please do check in. If you're going to be testifying in support, opposition, or neutral, please provide your business card to our committee staff so that we have your contact information should we need anything for minute purposes. Anybody testifying in support, opposition, or neutral, we're going to be limiting testimony to 2 minutes. If I do cut you off, please don't take that as a sign of disrespect. I just want to be transparent and fair to everybody. You can always submit your testimony in writing to our committee staff. I'll make sure that they upload it. We have 3 items on the agenda for today, and we're going to take the items in the order they appear, and then we'll be doing public comment at the very end. So with that, I'd like to open up the hearing on Senate Bill 3. Excuse me, Assembly Bill 3. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Andy Matthews, for the record, Nevada State Controller. I'm joined today by Chief Deputy Controller James Smack. And as the Chair noted, we are here to present on Assembly Bill 3. And I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Smack to get into the details of this bill. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, James Smack, Chief Deputy Controller. I'm here to offer testimony on Assembly Bill 3, the bill submitted by the State Controller's Office, changing reporting requirements for the Permanent School Fund. Little background on the Permanent School Fund. It was established by the Nevada Legislature in the late 1800s in Article 11, Section 3 of the Nevada Constitution. The State Permanent School Fund monies are pledged for educational purposes only and cannot be used or transferred for any other use. These monies come from fines collected by the counties. Under the penal laws of Nevada, also any monies bequeathed to the state and the state monies as cheated to the state would be other sources of funding. Interest earnings from the school fund are placed into the state distributed school account and appropriated among Nevada school districts and charter schools. The most recent report dated February 6, 2023 is available at controller.nv.gov, which is the report that ends on June 30, 2022, coinciding with the end of fiscal year 2022. The principal balance of the fund, according to this report, is $473,985,036 as of the end of the fiscal year. We've been reporting on this fund quarterly through the State Controller's Office in coordination with the Treasurer's Office. It is the only public report issued by our office that is compiled and released on a quarterly basis. We found this process to take a great deal of time by at least one of our accountants to compile the information, work back and forth with the Treasurer to get additional information, and then complete and release an unaudited report each quarter. This preparation process takes 60 hours or more per quarter, depending on how much back and forth there is between the SCO and the Treasurer's Office to complete the report. The review time by our office on the statements can take 8 hours or more on top of that. This is taking time away from working on our annual comprehensive financial report, as our qualified accountants who compile this report come from our financial reporting team, the same team that produces that report on an annual basis. By changing this to annual reporting, the 240 plus hours or so takes to compile the information will be reduced to about 60 hours per annum, and a review would take about the same amount of time for the annual report as well. This would save approximately 180 hours per year, or over 4 weeks of an accountant's time, but can be focused on completion of the ACFR, which has virtually become a year-round process. Controller's Office feels that annual reporting would be sufficient for the public interest, as the annual comprehensive financial report, popular annual financial report, single audit reporting, rainy day fund transfer reporting, and other reporting from our office is presently done on an annual basis. Thank you for the opportunity to, as briefly as I could, present on Assembly Bill 3, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
And thank you for the presentation. It's great seeing you again. Members, any questions? We'll start off with Senator Daly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. You answered a couple of the basic questions on how much and where it's been, and I knew it went back to the 1800s on that stuff. And I'm all for efficiency and various things and saving money and in that. I know you've been doing this quarterly since 1970. I looked up when it got put in there, and so it's a long time. We've been doing it 50 years. why all of a sudden do we need to change? And any money you save, you're gonna put it into a distributive school account? I'm just, think that's only fair.
Thank you for that question. Mr. Chairman, question of decorum, would you like me to address the question, to answer through you?
Please go direct.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, James Smack, Chief Deputy Controller for the record. Senator, what we've been looking to identify, and this was actually something that was identified by our predecessor, we're carrying the bill that was actually sponsored by former Controller Byrne, and she was looking at different efficiencies for the office. The ACFR process has gone from a 6-month reporting process, and now it's taking anywhere from 9 months to a year to complete. Number of different factors that are going into that, including Government Accounting Standards Board pronouncements. We have anywhere between 5 and 7 per year we're needing to implement. We've had some loss of institutional knowledge with some staff members retiring and that type of thing. What we're looking at this as is an opportunity to get the accountant that we have working on the permanent school fund reporting back to working on the act for another several FTE weeks per year. And the whole thought behind it is really to try to provide a little bit more efficiency for our office as much as anything. We have reached out to the Treasurer's Office, reached out to the Charter School Authority, reached out to the Department of Education, and we've concurred with LCB, and we haven't heard any real negative pushback on the bill either. So we did do our homework from that perspective as well, Senator.
And I appreciate that. I was only kidding about the money going to distributive school accounts. So. But yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure, I mean, if you're going to get the same basic information in quarterly reports, you're going to save some time and effort. I'm not seeing an issue.
Members, any additional questions? Senator Krasner, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering what is or has this quarterly complete financial report of the State Permanent School Fund used for?
Senator, thank you for the question. Honestly, it's primarily public reporting. It's primarily to show the public what we have in the permanent school fund at any one point in time, because this is an asset for everybody in the state of Nevada, as far as something that produces additional money toward for education. When interest rates are low, it's not an awful lot of additional money, because we are only able to transfer the interest only into the state education fund. We're not able to, but now that interest rates are coming up, the amount of the annual transfer may be in the several millions of dollars as opposed to just a few $1 million. I think in past year, if I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I think it was about 12 million that got transferred out in fiscal year 22. I anticipate that number to be a little bit higher this time because interest rates have done what they've done. And although most of the investments in the permanent school fund are obviously in very conservative things, even conservative interest rates like treasuries and that have gone up. So this should be a little bit better, a little bit more of a sustainable source of funding for the state. But the primary purpose is for the public good, providing them with reporting like our annual comprehensive financial report, popular annual financial report, and single audit reporting. I mean, those are audited reports. Those are reports that our bondholders are going to look at and that type of thing. The permanent school fund is the reporting is more for the public and not necessarily as much for any kind of a reporting agency or auditing agency. I hope that answers your question.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you both for the presentation, and we appreciate brevity, so thank you. If I could have you sit back, and we'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 3, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. I don't see anybody in Las Vegas or Carson City. BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to those wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 3. Anybody in Carson City or Las Vegas? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
And BPS will stay on the phone. Anybody wishing to testify in the neutral position?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. And anybody in Carson City or Las Vegas wishing to testify neutral for Assembly Bill 3? Seeing none, any closing remarks we may have? With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 3. Thank you. It's great seeing you as always. Next, we'll open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 44. And we'll go to Las Vegas whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Flores and members of the Senate Government Affairs Committee. I'm Fred Weigert, Director of Nevada Department of Veteran Services. I have with me here in Las Vegas the Deputy Director of Benefits, Evan Rush, and the IT Manager for our agency, Brandon Torres. And I believe up north I may have Deputy Director of Healthcare Services Vivian Ruiz and Executive Officer Joe Thiele. This presentation is on Assembly Bill 44, a department bill approved by the Governor's office. The intention of this bill has 5 parts. I will try to break this down so it doesn't take very long and do a little brevity myself. And so moving on. The first portion of the bill is regarding my titles for my deputy directors. Deputy Director of Programs and Services, we've been calling internally Deputy Director of Benefits, and our Deputy Director of Healthcare, Health and Wellness has been called internally Deputy Director of Healthcare Services for about the last 2 years, and we'd just like to make sure we include these with our new titles in NRS. It reflects a better range of duties our deputy directors have and align with our federal partners at the VA. I apologize. The next one is where you see adjusted compensation coming out. We are requesting that because this is obsolete language that's no longer used by the VA or by NDVS, and so we're asking for that to be removed. On page 5, we are asking that we change how we're treating our volunteers, the Nevada Veteran Advocates, and you can see there we're going to be offering the opportunity to participate in annual training, and then if requested by the volunteers to provide membership, mentorship. Previously, these were assigned to VSO. However, it's gotten so large, we're almost at 1,000 Nevada Veteran Advocates. We only have 17 Veteran Service Officers. That'd be about 65 volunteers to mentor for each of the VSOs, and that's just no longer feasible. The next one, this was actually to talk about providing quarterly training for our own veteran service officers, state veteran service officers, and so we also provide that training to any accredited service officer from any accredited service organizations such as DAV, VFW, American Legion, Paralyzed Veterans of America, etc. When it was first written by LCB, this came out as such training must be provided by a veteran service organization located in the state instead of us providing the training to the veteran service organizations. And so that's why you see the a couple of changes there. And finally, our contacts information is there, and I'd entertain any questions you may have.
And thank you for your presentation. And I appreciate you reaching out preemptively and walking me through this information personally. So thank you for your time. Members, any questions? I think everybody is good for now. I do appreciate you having everybody present in Las Vegas and or here to answer questions, but I think for now we are good. I'm going to invite you to sit back, and We'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 44. We'll start with Carson City, and then we'll move back to Las Vegas in case there's anybody wishing to join us there.
Chair Flores and committee members, my name for the record is Andrew Lee Pilbit. I'm the chairman of the United Veterans Legislative Council in Nevada. We recognize 279,000 veterans in our state. And when you take their immediate families, it gets over 500,000 Nevadans. We're in support of these updates and clarifications to NDVS, and we think it's a valuable improvement for the agency. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us, Chair. Anybody else wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 44? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
And thank you. We will stay on the phone. BPS, anybody wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 44?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Anybody in Carson City or Las Vegas? Seeing none, next BPS, anybody in the neutral position for Assembly Bill 44?
There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Any closing remarks we may have from Las Vegas?
Mr. Chair, Director Weiger, for the record, I just want to say thank you for your time and appreciate the questions ahead of time.
And thank you, sir. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 44. And next we have, it's 143, right? And next on the agenda, we have Assembly Bill 143. Assemblyman, how are you, sir? It's always good to see you.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores and members of the Senate Government Affairs Committee. I'm Assemblyman P.K. O'Neill, representing Assembly District 40, which includes all of Carson City and Story County and parts of Washoe County. And I'm here today to introduce to you Assembly Bill 143, a really good bill which has already been vetted and taken care of in the Assembly side and only momentarily needs your glance and review, may I say. But with that said, the purpose of this legislation is to allow the transfer of lands from the federal government to Story County. Should this legislation pass, Story County will receive a lands transfer of approximately 1,200 acres from the federal government for the purpose of removing a cloud on the title. Story County will be legally permitted to convey real property to anybody with an interest in the property without consideration. In other words, for free. Current law requires consideration for such property transfers, as NRS 241.281 only authorizes counties to sell or lease such property. This legislation empowers counties with an additional development tool and recognizes that local governments know best when it comes to best practices. We have with us today Story County Manager Austin Osborne and Story County Deputy District Attorney Keith Loomis here to assist in going through the history and also explaining the bill to you in its present form. And Chair, if I may I allow our County Manager to go?
Please.
Hello, Chairman Flores and members of this committee, thank you for the time to speak. My name is Austin Osborne. I'm the Story County Manager. With me also here is Deputy District Attorney Keith Loomis. He's been working with us on the technicalities and legal matters of this bill. And also with us is our Assessor, Janice Seddon, and our Vice Chairman, Clay Mitchell, behind us in the audience. I want to thank Assemblyman O'Neill for sponsoring and this committee for its consideration of this bill. A little bit of history on this, like Mr. O'Neill had mentioned, as early as the 1900s, Virginia City and Gold Hill, the town sites were created over federal land without creating a patent first. You're supposed to do that. And so all these years have gone by and these town sites are just kind of sitting there on federal land, and that creates a clouded title situation for roughly 1,200 parcels in town and just about 600 homes and 200 businesses, including Virginia City and Gold Hill. And with this clouded title, folks have a hard time getting title insurance. A lot of times there is only one, and we're grateful for that. A title insurance company that will even deal with our communities for someone trying to buy a home or trying to start a business. And it creates issues for home titles and for insurance and other reasons. Fortunately, after about 20 years working in Washington, D.C., we were able to get Public Law 113-291 passed in 2018. And this transferred about 1,700 acres from federal ownership over to the county through quitclaim. All that means is the federal government says we no longer have claim to it. It's not a full transfer of title, but nevertheless, it would remove that clouded title situation. And we're supposed to hold that land just for a moment and then get that quitclaimed over to residences and businesses in town. What is being proposed to you today is changes in the NRS that would allow us to make that transition, as will be described by Mr. Loomis here in a moment. So really, that's the purpose here, is just to create create a clear title. There is not mining interest or economic development or any of those types of elements involved with this. At this point, I'd like to pass it over to Deputy District Attorney Keith Loomis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Keith Loomis from the District Attorney's Office. So this bill is essentially intended to make the transfer of the property from the federal government to the private owners easy. It does not require an appraisal process, an auction process. It simply authorizes the county to go ahead and transfer by deed the property to the people that are going to be affected by it. Typically, a deed needs to be accepted. This one doesn't. It does not require acceptance. It's going to be effective upon recordation, and that's to make the process a little easier. What we will do is send by certified mail a copy of the deed along with the information as if the individual does not want to accept the deed, they have a way to disclaim their interest in it and record that and not accept the cleansing of title, essentially. That's the bulk of the bill. Now, it does make it a little bit easier. We're asking for an exception to the transfer tax requirement to say nobody's going to have to pay a transfer tax, which means we're not going to have to value the property that's being transferred over. It's just an exception. And that really is the substance of the bill. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
And thank you for the presentation. And we'll open it up for questions. Senator Daly, please.
Thank you, guys, and appreciate the explanation, because when I read it, I'm kind of going, what is exactly going on here? Because without the explanation, we would. So this is a legacy from the 1860s when Virginia City, prior to that actually, started. You guys are going to get it from the government, have it for the time it takes to actually send letters and various things, correct? Do you anticipate anybody's not going to accept the deed, and what would happen? I know you alluded to that. Who would then retain? It would just stay with Story County?
Essentially, if they decide to decline the interest in the property, it would remain with Story County.
You're not anticipating that?
I'm not, but we'll see what happens.
And if I could just have you identify, please.
Keith Loomis, sorry.
I think that would be highly unusual or whatever, but doing that. So is there a time period in there, and I'm not saying Story County would do this, right? Because then this is going to expire June of next year. Do we need that much time, or how come it's going to take that much time? And if you had deed to this property, theoretically, you could then sell it or do whatever without going through the normal process. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen, but also want to make sure you have enough time to get the work done.
Keith Loomis, essentially, I think that should be enough time to accomplish what we're trying to get done here.
Good afternoon, Jana Seddon, Story County Assessor for the record. Yes, the way this is going to work and the way we're going to basically do a mass transfer, it should not take us that long. In Nevada, we all have new CAMA systems that's going to make this a whole lot easier to transfer the names. I'm sure there might be a few that are out there that we may have a few little issues making sure that names are exactly correct. But I would say with no more than 2 months, Story County will have all their stuff taken care of. I would like to address the previous question you had. If we have owners of names on record, this is just an interest in the property, so it wouldn't necessarily go all into Story County's name. It just might mean that Story County might, if there is an interest in the property, and the other people say, no, we don't have it, most of the time you can't just give it up. So there would be a little bit of issues that we would have to go with that. So it's not just like, okay, Story County owns it if they say they don't want it. I'd say a lot of people say they don't want a piece of property, but there's other things that you'd have to do to actually rid yourself of that property if your name is on that property.
So that's where the interest comes. So they can say, hey, we're not going to do this, we're going to ignore your letter, this and that. But that doesn't extinguish their potential interest. So you would have to go through other steps before you guys could claim it and clear the title and have it be owned by Story County. Is that what I heard you say? Right? The gist of it, I guess.
Keith is obviously our ADA of record, but generally when you have owners of a property, you have to take other steps because what we are deeding is just a BLM interest, has quitclaimed their interest to Story County, but there could be other interested parties that we would have to reach out to make sure. And I'll let Mr. Loomis probably answer that part of it.
Keith Loomis. The deed is a quitclaim deed from the federal government to the county. This bill is supposed to authorize us to transfer it on to the people that have the interest in the property. But if they decline to accept it, in my opinion, it's going to remain with Story County.
May I, Senator Daley, through the chair, Austin Osborne for the record. And Keith can explain further if he feels necessary, but the federal government has quitclaimed it to the county, this land. All that means is that they're no longer claiming that they have interest in the land. There has not been an actual transfer, a quiet title process of actually transferring ownership over to the county at this point. The county at this point then wants to just quitclaim it to the respective property owners in this boundary. That's part of that original law, meaning that the county no longer has interest in that land, but at the same time, we're not actually holding full title to that property. If anybody were to not want to participate in this, they would not lose the ownership of their property. Thank you.
Senator Krasner, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I actually have a question for legal, if there is legal here. Okay, so they clearly called out in Section 1 that a Board of County Commissioners may convey real property without consideration or without complying with the provisions of NRS 244281 if, and then they list A and B, the real property was acquired by the county directly from the federal government for the purpose of clearing title to the real property, and the Board of County Commissioners conveys the real property to the person or persons as applicable who have an interest in the real property. But then when you go back to Section 5 of the bill, where it states that the taxes imposed by NRS 375.020, 375.023, and 375.026 do not apply to, on 15, it merely says a conveyance of real property to a person or persons from a Board of County Commissioners pursuant to Section 1 of this act. It does not include the other provision that Section 1 does include, which says that, and the real property was acquired by the county directly from the federal government for the purpose of clearing title to the real property. So I'm just concerned, would the fact that that second part is not there in Section 5, sub 15, allow any county commission or any board of county commissioners in the entire state to just convey real property to a person or persons and avoid the taxes imposed by those three sections of the NRS in Section 5?
For the record, this is Heidi Clarkson with the Legal Division of the Legislative Counsel Bureau. So the way I would interpret the bill and these provisions is that reading Sections 1 and 5 sort of together. First of all, in Section 1, Senator Krasner, you're correct. Those provisions of subsections 1A and B are joined with an and, so you have to have the real property was acquired by the county directly from the federal government for the purpose of clearing title. And second, the Board of County Commissioners conveys the real property to the person or persons as applicable who have an interest in the real property. So I read that as it's mandatory. You have to have both A and B. And then you get into Section 5 is just the exemption from the real property transfer tax. It references back to a conveyance of real property to a person or persons from the Board of County Commissioners pursuant to Section 1 of this act. So pursuant to Section 1 of this act, I think gets back to the language previously discussed where you have to have paragraphs A and B in Section 1. And so a Board of County Commissioners who couldn't meet the threshold of both paragraphs A and B of subsection 1 and otherwise conveyed real property to a person or persons would not be eligible for the exemption from the real property transfer tax.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, that was your intent in creating the bill, that both sections would have to be fulfilled in order for Section 5, sub 15, a conveyance of real property by a Board of County Commissioners would not be applicable. Those taxes would not be applicable. That was your intent, correct?
Senator Krasner, Austin Osborne, for the record, through the chair. I believe if I heard all that correctly, our intent was just these subject lands to be applicable only, not other situations that wouldn't be already in the NRS or this bill.
I understand, but I mean, your intent in creating Section 5, sub 15 isn't so that some future Board of County Commissioners can just do whatever they want and subvert paying those transfer taxes, right? Could you answer, please?
That's our intent, yes.
Thank you very much.
And if you could state your name for
Keith
the record.
Loomis.
And just for clarification, does this apply to all counties?
Keith Loomis, yes, it would.
Would you entertain a pop cap if we're trying to focus very specifically on the scenario that you've highlighted, just to ensure that that's all it captures and that we're not extending this to any other county?
So I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. Keith Loomis.
This is going to apply to all counties, this
Well,
language.
but it's not going to be in existence for a particularly long time at this point.
And so what I'm saying is, would we entertain a population cap to ensure that we're just capturing, so that it's specifically only applying to small counties and that we're not extending it to anybody else inadvertently? Would we be okay with that?
Mr. Chairman, Austin Osborne, for the record, I remember from prior testimony, and there may be people in the room that can elaborate on this, we do believe potentially one large county in our region has also been in support of this. So I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of or against that county. There might be folks here that want to elaborate on this. I'll step down for a moment.
And if we could clarify, if you could just clarify Clark or Washoe, not their intent, or if they're in support of the bill, but whether or not they have scenarios where there's individuals that they're trying to also convey the actual property right to a particular individual or business, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you, Chair. PK O'Neill for the record. There's another bill similar that it's already in statute where Nye County was doing this. Washoe County also had concerns, but as you recall, as legal said, to do this in action, to do this transfer, you have to meet the requirements that are set out in Section 1 of the property coming, the title coming from the federal government, and you're transferring it over immediately in a quick claim deed, which Nye County had some property. Their bill was a little, that's already in statute, was misleading, and they were looking at utilizing this. And it was Washoe County that asked for the amendment on the sunset part of the bill, just so it does not get confused out to anybody else. But if you're looking at a pop cap for Clark County, they hadn't, in conversations with the NACO, they have not mentioned anything about any other county having this type of situation that Virginia City, and when I say Virginia City, it's just not that part of Virginia City. It goes down to Gold Hill where all this mining was done, and then people have set up their homes there. And Senator Daley, and I know I'm going off somewhat, but Senator Daley, when Story County came to me and asked me to carry this bill, I won't use the words when they first explained it to me, but I will say I was in great surprise that there were actually people living in homes, selling property, moving forward, that could not get clear title to the property. I was absolutely dumbfounded by it and thought this was a joke, in all honesty. So legal, LCB legal, we worked together on this with Story County to make it as clear and as precise as possible. And then Washoe County came forward asking for the sunset just in case. There was Nye County was looking at it because their bill really isn't workable. But we did not want to make this an ad infinitum, as Senator Krasner indirectly said about, can someone else do this? They have to meet these very limited guidelines. So if a pop cap is the necessary part to make this go forward for Story County, we'd be in agreement. And I forget the population of Story County exactly, but 10,000 or less. But it could damage then Nye County if they really wish to go forward with it too and have that ability, because they are working on lands bills also. Nothing is simple, in other words, Senator. I'm sorry I had to answer this.
And thank you for that. One of the things that I learned in 2015 when I first came into this building, yes, when we walked in holding hands, Assemblyman, I remember somebody coming to me and saying, there's this bill that we really like. We're not going to testify in support, but we're going to utilize it. So support it. And I remember that, and I will never forget that. So I'm always concerned about opening the door for anybody else. I'm all in to help you, but I'm not trying to allow anybody to sneak in and have some fun for the next couple of years. But before we do any of that, we'll go to Senator Goycochea, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And all these small mining communities, again, they were patented. There was, they didn't mean anything. In Eureka County, the town of Eureka, we cleaned that up in 1947, way before my time even. And it was Judge Sexton actually issued an order. And I think the language you've got here, for the purpose of clearing title, is the key piece of it. In that case, through the district court, they, confirmed and transferred title, but then we ended up with sections, i.e. the railroad grade down through And we're still dealing with that today, because again, you're trying to clean it up. In this case, this gives the Board of County Commissioners the ability only if they are clearing title. And I don't care if you're, and again, limited to lands that were acquired from the federal government. And again, these are not RS 2477s, they're not road easements, they're not right-of-way easements. These are lands acquired directly from the federal government that you are clearing title on. Somebody did a lot of thought in this. I don't know how you clean it up, but again, all these small mining communities, Austin, Eureka, you go where you want. It's an issue, because again, they wanted to get the people out there, so the federal government, yeah, they gave them 1,000 acres, same thing, everybody, and people moved in and started living on them, and ultimately, we can't clear title. So, bottom line, well thought out bill, it looks like. I'm not seeing the downside of it, but I'm looking like you are.
Vice Chair, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm not sure if my question might be for County Manager Osborne or maybe for the District Attorney. And I appreciate the bill. I think it's a great idea to try to help all these folks who have, there's this historical anomaly, and I know you've worked so hard with the federal government. I guess my question is, how will the county know who are the persons that have that interest? Are there rolls? Are there property tax payments? I guess my worry is if, let's say, the county thinks that Senator Daley has an interest in 123 Main Street, and he should get the property, but I believe that I have an interest in 123 Main Street, and I should get the property. Do you think that there's going to be situations like that, or is there a pretty accurate roll of who has those interests in these properties?
Janice Eden, for the record. We will be going off of the tax roll as it currently is right now, who we say is the owner of record. It's the clearest title that we have. If someone does come, then that's going to be, I would say that would be illegal, that they'd have to actually prove, and that would be a whole different legal process. But the way we have it, it is going to be who is the owner of record, who we send a tax bill to, who pays the taxes as the legal owner, and that's the way we're going to do it. The process that we will do is we will hold for about 3 days in the time period that we record the deeds. We will not be recording any other documents during that time period, because what we don't want is to record a document and let someone else come in the middle, and then we're deeding it back to the wrong person. So we will not be recording any documents in the Virginia City Gold Hill in this 700, approximately 1,700, 1,800 acres. We will not be recording until everything else gets in and the other deed is recorded. Then at that point, we'll open up recordings back again, so we don't get any overlapping. We've thought this out really to the best of our knowledge to try to not have any loopholes for that.
Thank you. That gives me a lot more comfort. Thank you, Assessor. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you again for the presentation. I'd like to invite you to sit back, and we'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 143, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Flores and committee. Thank you for your hard work this session and for the opportunity to weigh in on this bill. For the record, my name is Clay Mitchell, Mitchell, and I'm here to speak in support of AB 143. Not only am I a county commissioner for Story County, but I'm a resident of Virginia City, and my family as well owns some property in the town of Gold Hill, so I get hit on both sides on this issue. I'd like to highlight just a couple of ways that the uncertainty around clear title affects our community and the way it really has impact. And the first has already been mentioned to some extent, but that is that home purchases and refinances become more difficult. Often, as was mentioned, title companies won't offer title insurance when there is a question about the title in these particular town sites. And in most cases, there is one title company that will provide a title insurance policy, which we're grateful for, certainly, but is not an optimal situation. And as you know, lenders require that title insurance to be in place for a transfer. The second impact that I think this would really have is clearing the title will assist in the historic preservation that needs to happen in these communities. The entirety of Virginia City and Gold Hill are part of the Virginia City Historic District, a National Historic Landmark. And anything that can be done to standardize property records, lower barriers to entry, will help encourage private investment into preserving this national treasure. The more anomalies that enter into that, including architectural standards that must be complied with, make it more difficult to preserve the numerous structures that are really part of our heritage. As was mentioned as well, there's no component of this bill that's designed for the disposition of property. It's really just to clear the title and to make sure that we have proper and orderly records and that smooth purchase and sale transactions can happen for the owners. I want to just very briefly address Senator Daley's earlier question about the time frame. In addition to putting the sunset on the bill, and that was prompted by the previous attempt by Nye County that's still on the books from past action that didn't really do the work that it was supposed to, but it's still sitting there. And so the question was brought up in the Assembly, why have two different ways to do it? And we said, you're right, we know this will work for us, let's sunset it so once we get done what we need to, then we can revisit it. If it worked well, maybe there's an appetite to keep it on, but it goes away. They also ask, and we accepted that friendly amendment, to postpone the bill taking effect until October 1st as opposed to on passage. And what that allows for is they wanted to just make sure they really understood if they had similar situations, they would have time to prepare for those. And so we accepted that amendment. And so that helps understand the time frame and how we arrived at it. The idea is that nothing would be done under this bill until after October, and then by the middle of next year, it would sunset. So anyway, the amendments that have been made are reasonable and proper. They're improvements that make it better legislation, and we would appreciate your support on this bill, and certainly want to appreciate express appreciation for Assemblyman O'Neill for presenting it for us. Thank you.
And thank you. Please.
Will Adler, for the record, with SSGR, representing Story County. That's why you should go first sometimes. I would like to ditto everything that Clay Mitchell said there, as he did a great job clarifying the majority of everything on this bill. This is a unique measure. AB 143 is trying to address a clouded title situation that shouldn't exist, but does exist in one location in particular in Story County in Nevada. But just to clarify, the amendments prior to this committee were to address some of the concerns stated today, that this shouldn't be an open-ended door, that this should be something that has a fixed timeline that can be used in a certain time, because as designed, this is a known issue that should have known entities that need to be transferred. So hence an appropriate sunsetting of the time when this is available was put into place. I think that does cover the majority of the concerns that the committee brought forward, and it is sort of the culmination of a long, thoughtful process to get here, and it is a very focused bill for a very focused need, but it is one that is present in Story County, and we appreciate your support, and I appreciate Assemblyman O'Neill for bringing this forward. Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us. Please.
For the record, my name is Lee Starrett. 20 years ago, my wife and I bought a house in Virginia City, and I just want to say we're looking forward to getting a cleared deed and cleared title to the house. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us, sir. Is there anybody else wishing to join us in support of Assembly Bill 143? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. We'll go to those wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 143. BPS?
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Anybody in Carson City or Las Vegas? Seeing no opposition here or in Las Vegas. BPS, anybody wishing to testify in the neutral position?
There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Any closing remarks you may have?
Chair, I'm just going to be real quick about this. 2 decades of work have been devoted to helping the families and small businesses get clear title on their lands, which they have owned since the days of the Comstock Lode, and helping new arrivals considering the Comstock as a place to come do business, raise a family, and enjoy our beautiful state. The success of the 2018 Federal Lands Act was a major step towards this achievement. Passage of AB 143 will close this gap and allow Story County to complete the transition. I appreciate your consideration for this bill, and I look forward to, if you have any questions in the future, please reach out. I will be available to you, but I thank you for passage of the bill.
And thank you, Assemblyman. We appreciate you presenting in front of us today, and we appreciate you working on this bill. And maybe offline, we'll continue that conversation regarding the population cap. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 143. And next, we will go to those wishing to join us for public comment. Carson City or Las Vegas? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us for public comment?
There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Members, we will be here again Wednesday. It is our intent. Well, before I say this on the record, give me 1 second. All right, members, I was going to make a promise that I can't keep. So I will keep that off the record, but we will be meeting on Wednesday at 3:30, and I appreciate everybody's hard work. This meeting's adjourned.